The purpose of this presentation is to get you associated with critical thinking as part of your daily lives in the lab. So not only does our college have critical thinking as one of our institutional outcomes, okay, and they want you to demonstrate the ability to think critically by gathering facts, generating insights, analyzing data, and evaluating information. That's not any different than what we do in the lab, because we have our medical laboratory technology program goals. Goal number 4, to provide a curriculum that will stress critical thinking processes and thus prepare a student for rapidly changing instrumentation and procedures in the clinical laboratory world. So as you'll see, critical thinking is going to be everywhere. It's part of the college, it's part of the program, it's going to be part of your career when you graduate. So we need to start working on this as you're in first year. Some points you need to consider when you are thinking of a problem: clarity, accuracy, precision, relevance, depth, breadth, and logic. Okay, so how clearly stated is the problem that you have to solve? Is there going to be an answer? One answer. Um, Accuracy, how accurate is the data that you've been given? Or in the lab, we deal with accuracy and precision. Are the results reproducible? Because if you recall, the definition of precision in the lab is reproducibility. Relevance, is there excess data? So how are you going to take 3 pages of lab results and choose what data is relevant to the question that's being asked? Depth, how in-depth are the results? Do you have a series of screening tests, or are you looking at a test that's specific for a certain disease or a disease state or a group of organs? Okay, and breadth, is the result specific to one problem, or could it possibly cover several problems? There are a lot of diagnoses that um, or a lot of lab results that are part of a diagnosis that can't actually narrow it down to one. So you have to look at that as well. And logic, that's where you come in as well. You have to, based on the given data, what is the most logical conclusion? A lot of times there will be more than one conclusion, but you need to use your knowledge to critically decide what is the best solution or answer to the problem. So in the lab, we use critical thinking several different ways. The one I've been talking about is formulating a diagnosis based on laboratory data. Um, the other one would be, or another one would be, looking at a specific lab value and recognizing if that value is reasonable. There have been times where the machine will put out an answer, and whenever it's looked at by a critically thinking human, uh, it says that result wasn't right. So then you're going to troubleshoot. And again, that takes critical thinking skills. You have to go back. You have to look at things like, was the specimen acceptable? Was there hemolysis? Um, was there fibrin that might have gotten in the specimen? Was the specimen old? Okay, those answers come back. Was it a mechanical issue with the machine? Do you need to trace, did it happen with the probe? Would it happen with the aspiration of the sample? Did it happen somewhere further along in the analysis process? Um, are you using expired reagents? Is there, things like that. You just have to use your thinking ability to diagnose problems on a machine just like you would diagnose them on a patient. Okay, and we do both. So an example that I came up with is asking you, what is the most likely diagnosis for the patient given the following results? So we have our ALT, AST, ALP, total protein, bilirubin, GGT, and LD. So in your head, you should know what organ these tests are specific for. And if you don't, that's something that you need to learn. Other things that would be, do you have all the information you need? Actually, no, you don't, because you don't have a patient history. So that would be additional information that would aid in your diagnosis. So if you were just to look at this like a robot and say, oh, these results are, and you have to know if they're elevated. So how do you know if they're elevated? You have to know what normal is. Okay? So in this particular case, it is specific for the liver. And we look at this and we think, okay, so this patient has something going on with their liver. Well, how many different diagnoses can you come up with? Viral hepatitis, um, antibiotic-induced hepatitis, cirrhosis of the liver. Okay, so all of these things, um, you need to have a patient history so that you can go through your diagnosis process, which is your critical thinking process, and diagnose. If there had been one simple sentence in here that says the patient has been diagnosed with chronic hepatitis C, that's going to change the whole way you diagnose the patient. If the family history or the patient history said that the patient had chronic alcohol abuse problems, then you're going to go differently through your diagnostic process. But in order to do that, you have to engage your critical thinking skills. So as far as the application of critical thinking, your final exams are going to be in the form of case studies. And if you're not able to follow that process critically, you're not going to be successful on the exam. So the more we practice it now in first year, the better off you'll be in second year. So I just hope this presentation has shed a little light onto the fact that, this is not just a recall kind of program. This is absolutely a critical thinking program, and it's an institutional as well as a program outcome.